Hey y'all, I want to talk really quickly about internalizing the God image. Internalizing the God image or the Christ. Internalizing Christ. Okay, so, modern day Christians, they would say that, Christianity, it's not a religion, it's a relationship with Jesus. It's a relationship with Christ, relationship with God. Yes. And they speak in these ways that are very cloaked, and most Christians who are identifying themselves as like Orthodox Christians who believe in like some of these major tenets of Christianity, like virgin birth, Jesus was a real historical person, Jesus is coming back again, like these type of things, they would be considered Orthodox Christians. So now those are like exoteric Christians. Which is exo is outer. There's esoteric, which is like the inner truth, which isn't necessarily understood by most people. Like it's not mainstream. And these people would be considered heretics. So that's kind of like the category that I fall into. And so when they say, Christianity is a relationship with God, they're kind of talking in this more like veiled language. When you really pierce through that veil with the esoteric view of Christianity, you see all these, phrases in the Bible like, I have the mind of Christ, Christ in me, and they will apply them to themselves, the exoteric Christians, the Orthodox Christians. But what does it mean who is Christ? Was Christ God? Well, then they got the whole Trinity thing they got to deal with. So that's another cloak layer trying to separate you from this inner truth of internalizing the God image. So who was Christ? Was Christ God? Or was he only the Son? He was this Trinity thing, this like 3-in-1. It's like very complicated thing that's actually not in the Bible. There's like literally one phrase, scripture in the Bible. It's in 1 John that could loosely be applied to the Trinity. But mostly it's a Catholic thing that was like just created to kind of confuse you and more like cloak the identity, because they don't want you to be God. They don't want you to internalize the God image. If you do, then you're going to not go to confession. You're not going to go to the priest. You're not going to pay your tithes. You're not going to go to church anymore. The whole institution falls if you're not going through them to get your little taste of religion and happiness. If you can go directly to the source, go within to commune with God, which some of them do that. Some exoteric Christians do that. They've understood it. But they don't, the powers that be, the powers of this world, to quote the Bible, they don't want you to come into your truth that you are God. And so that's a whole nother thing in the Bible. And this was created to try and get you further from the truth that you're God, is they've created this Antichrist type thing. And if you really look at what the Antichrist spirit is, it's saying that Jesus didn't come in the flesh. So basically denying the historical Jesus or whatever. It has nothing to do with someone standing up and pretending to be God. That they've taken Old Testament scriptures and said, aha, this is what Revelation is when it's talking about the beast and the sun. I'm drawing a blank now on like the three things that rise up. One rises out of the sea. One says, one beast, he's talking like this, the words, and then in Daniel, there's like this king or whatever. But it's all this like mixing of this Old Testament with the New Testament, and they're saying, see, this is directly saying this here is this guy who's going to claim that he's God, and he's going to sit in the temple of God claiming that he's God. And that Paul wrote that in like Thessalonians. So that's a little red flag that gets thrown to people when you say, I am God. You're like, oh, you're the Antichrist because you're trying to say you're God. No, I've understood the esoteric knowledge in Christianity that says I have the mind of Christ, Christ within me. Who was Christ? Christ was God. If I have the mind of Christ, I have the mind of God. If I have Christ in me, I have God in me. They're like, oh, well, Christ, he was the Son of God. He's not God the Father, the unknowable one, the blah, blah, blah. It's all images trying to explain an unexplainable God, the source of all creation. It cannot be explained. So we have to have an image like the Buddha, Christ, Jesus. These are images to try and get our very limited mind to understand that we are God. But we're living from a limited experience. And the limited experience is totally necessary for life to exist here. That's one of the rules and the laws when we came here, was that we had to forget who we were. And that's the whole purpose of life and spiritual journeying, is to come into this knowledge of the truth, to quote Paul, that you are one with God. There's never been a separation from God. Only in your mind. The only place you can run from God is in your mind. And to quote the psalmist, he said, where can I run from you? If I go up to the heights, behold, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, hell, behold, you are there. So God's in hell. What happened to the God that can't look upon sin and had to turn his back on Christ on the cross because he had so much sin on him? He has to separate himself from the sinner. No. He's the God that was Christ sitting with the sinners, the prostitutes, going to the woman at the well that had 5 husbands. He is in the midst of hell. He is in the midst of the sinners because he is them. They're simply blinded to the truth that they've always been God. If they wanted to be well, they can take up their mat and follow him. Do you want to walk? Do you want to be healed? Oh, I can't. I'm making an excuse because I can't get down into the water because, oh, I'm not holy enough. I'm blah, blah, blah. Do you want to be healed? Then just do it. Then just pick up your mat and walk. Ye of little faith. So, yeah, internalizing the God image. This is huge. This is world changing. When people realize that they're God, and not like, oh, only I am God. When they realize everything, the trees are God, I am God, that all of life is sacred. Once they start acting in that way, once they're driving through traffic, having road rage, and then they remember, oh yeah, I'm God, living this limited experience right now because this is one of the laws of nature, the laws of being here. I have to put on this egoic self that is a female, 33 years old, has 4 kids, blah, blah, blah. This is my job. This is where I live. All of those identities I must wear to live in this world and have this experience, because without that, I would just be God floating around doing nothing. But I have to wear that identity and then go through life and have experiences, because that's what God desires. That's what I wanted when I came here. When I put on this, I wanted to have this experience. And I believe in reincarnation. So I think each person, in their experience and their time, are living what they need. And it's just a different facet, a different observation viewpoint of God. It's kind of like a giant scientific experiment that God wanted, that he created. He was an infinite being, had all infinite potential, but he was just out there existing. And he wanted to divide himself into different incarnations, the Christ, Buddha, me, you, cats, dogs, trees, butterflies, and that was the purpose of creation. A lot of Christians would say the purpose of creation is to glorify God. Yes. What does that mean? Again, it's veiled language. What does it mean to glorify God? Oh, I want to praise him by singing songs and reading the Bible and leading people to God through the gospel. No. It's living your unique experience and then growing in the knowledge of the truth that you are God, and then you're going out into the world as God while also, understanding that temporarily you are this human, but you recognize I'm neither bond nor free, male nor female, Jew nor Greek, just like Paul wrote, we're none of these things, we are Christ. That's our true identity. And then you go out there and you be Christ. You be the hands and feet of Jesus, as the Christians would say. Feed the poor, or feed the poor, heal the sick, be the great physician, lay hands on them, whatever. Love your neighbor as yourself, because they are yourself. They are also God. Seeing God in your unsaved neighbor who is an adulterer. Seeing God in the murderer. Trying to understand why there's evil in the world. I read this book. It's called The God Theory, and it says essentially that evil is the opposite of evolution. And so, if we're this scientific experience, we're God experiencing itself. He needs variation, polarities, good, evil, hot, cold, light, dark. Without those things, there is no reality, there is no experience. So we need these things to create change, and evolution and consciousness is ever growing and evolving. That's God knowing itself more fully. A lot of this is consciousness, is turning your conscious awareness within and understanding, who am I? Am I born in sin? Am I like dirty, rotten sinner and I deserve hell and punishment and all this? That's a terrible, terrible identity to have. Or am I the ever-expanding God force, having a temporary human experience so that I can grow and change and love and experience all the beautiful differences that there are in life, and interact with myself, with other people, with nature. It's this sense of self. I read a lot of Carl Jung, and he talks about individuation and the self. And I really believe now the self, where you get your self, like your self-worth, your self-identity, all these things, your sense of self is tied to your God image. So how you view your God, in each, different person, they're going to view God differently. That's how you're viewing yourself at that moment in time, and that can change. So for instance, like when I was a Christian, I remember just like praying and crying out to this God that was so far away and so uncaring about me and just indifferent, and he never responded. He never spoke to me. He wasn't allowed to speak to me. He was only allowed to speak to me through the Bible. I had to read the Bible to understand him. I could have no direct experience of the divine. Now that all of that dogma has fallen away, and I've just kind of like given up on all of Christianity, and I've walked this more like esoteric spiritual path where nothing's off limits. I don't put God in the box of the Bible. I don't put him in the box of Orthodox religion. I'm free to experience him in any possible way, even if it was labeled evil or wrong or dark by Christians before. I've expanded myself, because to me, God is expansion. He is everything. He is the dark black hole of space. and he is unknowable, and he's not a he. I keep saying he. But all of that majesty and mystery and blah blah blah, that is also contained in me. So if I want to know more about that and the mystery, I can go within to the mystery in here. And my sense of self has expanded. So whereas before I thought, God is far away, he's indifferent, he doesn't care about me, blah, 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 blah. That was how I viewed myself. I didn't care about myself. I was in an abusive relationship. I continually chose abusive partners for myself because I did not care about myself. I thought I was trash. I wanted to throw myself away. I wanted to kill myself at one point in time. That was me as a Christian, a devout Christian, blah, 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 because they tell you you're a dirty, rotten sinner and you deserve to burn in hell because you're a piece of shit. And that's how I thought about myself. That was my internalization of the God image, the self, because remember, my view of myself was directly applied to my view of God. He's this scary, wrathful God sitting on the throne far away. I can't get to him. I have to go to church. I have to do this and that. And it was all an external view of God. God is separate from me. I cannot be connected to him unless I'm in the spirit. I got to have Christ. I got to put him on daily. Put on it was this like old and new man, something that I really struggle with my husband, and the old way of thinking that I came out of was this old versus new man that Paul talks about. Whereas I see the old man is dead, my husband says that like the old and the new man fight daily. Your new self and your old self, like your born again self, which he wouldn't say born again because he's a mid-act dispensationalist, but he would say your regenerated self, the Christ, whatever, in you fights with the old man, which is your flesh, and you can never take off your flesh and blah, blah, blah. But, it is kind of like the ego self and the eternal God within fighting, which is, that goes on. So there's a little bit of truth to that. But to me, I cannot go back to, yes, I wear an ego. Yes, I have to operate as a female, a mother, 33, all this stuff. I have to operate in this ego self, but I can't ever lose that knowledge of where I've come in my spiritual journey, my spiritual evolution, my evolution of consciousness. I can't unsee that I'm God now. So to go back to what I was saying is, before I hated myself, I put myself in bad situations, I put bad things in my body, I wasn't taking care of myself and honoring myself because I was treating myself like how I thought God felt about me. My relationship with God was wrong because I was externalizing the God image, and my external view of him was that he didn't like me, he was wrathful, he was distant, and now I've internalized the ever-expanding universe inside of myself to see that I am one with that. I'm one with everything. In him we live and move and have our being. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I want to go down into hell, if I want to be dirty, if I want to be bad, dark, evil, I can't get away from God because God is me. My sense of self is God. So I can't undo that. I can't undo this conscious awareness of being divine. Once you've gone down that path, it's like you can't come back from that. But it's a good thing. But yeah, it's the sense of self, understanding the God image is the self image, and then internalizing the God image. Christianity is a stepping stone to that, but you can't get stuck in the dogmas the doctrines and the dogmas of the Trinity and the blah, blah, blah. You have to go deeper with the esoteric knowledge. And Paul's writings are huge, and that's why Peter, at the end of one of the books of Peter, he says that those who are unlearned, they wrestle with Paul's writings because they're hard to be understood. He was trained in the deep mysteries that come from Egypt and things like that. But it's not something out of reach. If you want it, you can ask for your eyes to be open. I think about this all the time, and I've talked about it in my other videos. One of my first videos where I explain my testimony. As a Christian, deep in the trenches, I prayed, Lord, open my eyes, and He did. And now He's not a he to me, and the eyes of my understanding are being enlightened every day. It's a journey. It's so yeah, my eyes are being open to the truth that all is divine, life is sacred, everyone is God. So once you come to that place, there's a self-love and a love of everything, a love of nature, just this like peaceful, like acceptance of everything. Everything is as it should be. There's not this striving, this fighting, this everything is playing out because everything is God. There's no rush for Him, God, me, to experience more or get to some other level of enlightenment. No, it's all unfolding beautifully and evolving in the right time. And actually, on time and space, they don't really exist. That was the other thing that was cool that I read in that book called The God Theory. He was a scientist, and he studied like inertia and the 0 point field. It got like really complicated at one point, but basically from the perspective of light, like if you beam light out, like the speed of light, they talk about the speed of light, but from the perspective of light, time and space don't exist. And that's kind of like how it was for God in the beginning as light. He said, let there be light, but time and space don't exist for light, for God itself. So He created life, experience, light, dark, these seemingly differences, which only exist in like this little, we're kind of like in a test tube or a petri dish, so to speak, of our universe, and there could be infinitely other universes with other laws that don't have polarity, like they only see oneness. But we have these laws where we have to see separation. But in the deep fundamental level, all things are one, all things are God. But we do have these differences in the here and now. But forget where I was going. But that was like a really cool. That book was really helpful for me. And yeah, so just internalizing the God image is really key, I think, to a good spiritual evolution, trying to understand more. This is my Lydia. She's my little sun baby, little sun God baby. I talked about her in the other video, maybe you remember. But what you been doing, coloring? Been coloring? So yeah, that's where I'm at now. But the kids, they still go to church with their dad at the Mid-Acts Dispensationalism Church, and I don't try to stop any of that because everybody is on their own path there will come a day, just like there was for me, where they'll start asking questions and they'll start developing their own truth. You want a nurse, you gotta wean this girl. So yeah, like I was saying before, everything's evolving just as it should be. There's no point in like trying to fight any processes that are occurring. So even with my husband, he has his own journey and his own process, and that's why we don't fight anymore. That's why he's not abusive anymore, because like we had a discussion the other day, and by the end of it, I was just like, you know what? You know more about it than I do, and I love you, and Mommy, you know, you win. So that's the place I come from now. So bye.